acquires a different set of values and expectations than the one before them. Neil Howe and William Strauss, respected authors and experts in the field of generation studies, believe that every generation attempts to reverse what it perceives as the worst characteristics of the previous generations and tries to vacate the different roles of the dying generation. Howe and Strauss contend that the cyclical process has been proven over and over. Generational information informs us about members' aspirations or what they want to accomplish, expectations or what they think they'll gain, feelings regarding parents, siblings, authority figures, and public or political events, and pop culture or what they find entertaining. We must realize, though, that generations do not define individuals, but generational information is a reference point for individuals within the generation. Tom Brokaw labeled the GI generation as America's greatest generation. History has marked them as successful World War II victors. They were born in the first quarter of the 20th century from 1901 to 1924, and if living, they are currently in their 90s or older. This generation experienced the Roaring '20s and the Great Depression. Many men fought in World War II, while large numbers of women were at home serving the nation's war needs in factories. They were great risk takers and team players. They were responsible in large part for restructuring American education, business, and government systems after the war. This generation valued a high school diploma and considered it sufficient for success in life. This generation gave birth to the silent generation, who was born between 1925 and 1945. Individuals in this generation are currently in their mid-70s to early 90s. The youngest were deployed at the end of World War II. They were labeled the silent generation because they were expected to stay out of the way while their parents were busy fighting Germans and Japanese. They grew up feeling they were born too late to do great deeds and felt it was their responsibility to protect the status quo. This generation placed high value on high school graduation. Baby boomers were born following World War II around 1943. Up to the early 1960s, they currently are in their mid-50s to mid-70s. For the 5-year period between 1956 to 1960, 21.2 million boomers were born, nearly 1.5 times the number born between 1941 to 1945, and the largest for any 5-year period in the 20th century. Generally speaking, this generation was deeply into personal needs and to an extent self-absorbed. They rebelled against cultural sterility in which they felt that they grew up in. The economy boomed during their era until the latest recession. Their time is marked by the Vietnam War, civil unrest, Beatles, and drugs. Boomers today represent 28% of the U.S. population, but in 1964, they represented 40% of the population. In other words, in 1964, more than 1/3 of the U.S. population was under 19 years old. No wonder the baby boomers, due to sheer numbers, have attracted so much attention by researchers and business markets. Even today, boomers influence the Social Security system. Many boomers failed to see the importance of a high school diploma, but got one anyway. Some saw the value of a college education as necessary to succeed, although many men went to college to delay entry into the Vietnam War. Boomers have been culture creators and will leave an indelible mark on American society as professed by many historians. Boomers spawned Generation X, a reactive and nomadic lot. born between 1961 and 1981, who are currently aged 26 through 48. Their self-absorbed boomer parents made Generation Xers feel underprotected as children, and many felt they had to raise themselves. As a result, Generation Xers grew up quickly and were reared on television shows, Atari, and first-generation Macintosh computers, and a game called Pac-Man. During their era, the U.S. underwent a very selfish period called the Me generation. As a lot, the stereotypical description of Generation Xers is that they are cynical, hopeless, frustrated, and undermotivated slackers who wore grunge clothing, listened to alternative music, and could not get real jobs. This tag has stuck, stereotypes and all. However, successful Gen Xers were responsible for the dot-com boom of the 1990s. In general, they were pragmatic about the value of a high school diploma and did not view it as sufficient for success, although many failed in college. Howe and Strauss have named the next generation the Millennials, born from 1982 to 2004, and currently in their mid-30s to age 14. So, if you teach high school, you work with millennials and have an understanding of them. Millennials now number 83.1 million and represent more than 1/4 of the nation's population, with many grown adults. Their size exceeds that of the 75.4 million baby boomers, according to new USA Census Bureau statistics. Millennials are mostly children of Generation Xers. While the baby boomer generation was content to entrust their children's education to the schools, Generation Xers do the opposite. They want to be involved in every aspect of their children's education, much to the chagrin of many teachers and students themselves. Many are what Howe and Strauss call helicopter parents. If you have interacted with a helicopter parent at a parent-teacher conference, you have quickly identified that they are willing to challenge school policy, including teacher and teaching techniques and school officials' decisions. With that said, public opinion polls of millennial parents show that they generally support the standards-based learning push and are not nearly as opposed to tough testing requirements as educators. Millennials themselves are not like their parents nor grandparents. In their book, Millennials Rising, The Next Great Generation, Howe and Strauss make the point that millennials' attitudes and behaviors represent a sharp break from Generation X and run counter to boomer trends. Howe and Strauss label 7 distinguishing millennial traits. In general, they feel spatial, are sheltered, remain confident with high levels of trust and optimism. They are more connected to their parents than previous generations, are team-oriented with strong team instincts and tight peer bonds, want to achieve success as the best educated, best behaved adults in the nation's history. They sense pressure to excel by being pushed to study hard, avoid personal risks, and take full advantage of the collective opportunities that adults bestow upon them as trophy kids. They also support conventionalism by accepting many parental values and societal rules, although they want their voices and opinions heard. For those millennials still in school, the National Assessment of Education Progress Test shows a steady increase in student performance in spite of younger millennials spending more than 7.5 hours a day with their electronics. This time does not count the hour and a half they spend texting or the half hour they talk on their cell phones. Many are constantly multitasking by surfing the internet while doing other tasks. So basically, millennials spend every free minute of their day engrossed with technology. This generation is growing up in an era of unparalleled affluence except for the latest recession blip. So they are the largest group of youthful spenders in American history, with enormous online buying power. Above all, many millennials believe that a middle-class lifestyle is a birthright. The millennial generation faces challenges unlike generations before. Even with affluence, many millennials struggle to keep their financial heads above water. According to the USA Today survey, millennials say that the economy and jobs are a big concern. The U.S. Census data supports this issue and shows that 40% of our nation's unemployed are millennials. Those working are earning less today than the same age group did in the past and have greater difficulty in securing a job that utilizes their education than those of a similar age a decade ago. Although millennials are the brightest and best educated generation ever, with 61% having attended college, about 4 in 10 of the millennials aged 18 to 29 currently have student loan debt. On other issues, the Millennial Impact Project reveals that millennials care deeply about civil rights and racial discrimination, followed by terrorism and foreign policy. Millennials report the highest levels of stress and depression than any other generation at the same age. 1 in 5 millennial workers have experienced on-the-job depression, compared to only 16% of Gen Xers and baby boomers. Presently, over 50% of 18 to 24-year-olds live with and rely financially on their parents as a result of evolving social norms and fallout from the worst recession in generations. Millennials increasingly tend to put off milestones like getting married, having a child, and buying a home than previous generations. Regarding the opioid epidemic, 1 in 9 millennials aged 12 to 25 have used prescription drugs like Vicodin and Adderall within the past year. Marijuana leads their drug usage and will probably increase since it has been legalized in many states. As previously mentioned, but key to understanding millennials, they are saturated by technology like no other generation. The technological advances that brought computers, cell phones, and the internet into the homes of everyday people have changed the way all of us live our lives and interact with others. This phenomenon is projected to continue even at a faster pace and have created a more globalized, interconnected world. Millennials have been plugged into one or another electrical device since they were toddlers, and they engage with their smartphones more than any other group, including their parents, friends, and coworkers. Since the cell phone has become the fastest adopted intervention in the history of mankind, texting and instant messaging are the chosen communication methods for many millennials, with surfing and Googling with their smartphones or tablets the desired method of information searching. Snapchat and Instagram are now the means for social interactions, with Facebook taking a back seat. Regarding learning, millennials process information in different ways than previous generations, and their attention span is much shorter. Teachers need to adapt the classroom to meet the millennials' learning needs. With millennials, achievement matters more than content. They like interactivity and games, multitasking when learning, and need structure as active learners. Here's a few additional teaching tips for adapting the classroom to meet millennials' learning needs. Rethinking how the classroom works will make teaching more appealing to young people. Integrating technology into learning is expected in today's classrooms for millennials. Since technology has always been in their lives, using it for learning is a foregone conclusion. Using visuals effectively in learning activities is important to teach millennials. Millennials are accustomed to information being constantly bombarded at them through visuals with pop-up ads while surfing the web on their tablets or when accessing information on their phones. A great way to get information across quickly in an easy-to-understand manner is through effective uses of infographics. Millennials want to know what is expected of them as soon as learning begins. Specifically, they want to know how they will be evaluated and what criteria will be used to evaluate them. They also want to know and expect clear communication on how the information they are learning correlates to their grade. If teachers use knowledge assessments, they should outline that information up front in a graphic organizer so the students know what level of performance is expected of them. Millennials appreciate exemplars that show them precise learning outcomes. Millennials crave feedback and advice through teacher connections. Millennials appreciate opportunities for coaching through learning, but are criticized sometimes for needing too much hand-holding. As with all learners, incorporating praise and positive feedback into learning experiences increases engagement and knowledge retention. Millennials demand collaborative, peer-assisted learning environments through lively sessions that enable them to work the way they want to work with smartboards, tablets, response systems, web-based social media, and mobile devices. Okay then, move over, millennials. The most recent generation is Generation Z, born since 2004. The oldest in this generation are 13. If you teach in an elementary school, then you will work with Generation Z students. They were born digital, have no idea there has been a technological revolution, and are called millennials on steroids. Their 8-second attention span is even shorter than the millennials' 12 seconds in many instances. Don't get fooled, however. Generation Zs are not mini millennials. Although millennials were the first digitally native generation, they still may have learned addition on flashcards. On the other hand, Generation Zs more than likely had various apps for learning that provided instant answers and immediate feedback. This generation is the most materially endowed and technologically saturated generation ever seen. Their self-esteem and decision-making are highly influenced by a core group of 3 to 8 friends. Generation Z, their brains are wired for give and take of bytes and bits. That's B-Y-T-E-S. As a result, they reach for a smart device every 7 minutes. They multitask across 5 screens instead of 2 like millennials. Additionally, Gen Z students are globally aware as speed demons who anticipate instant gratification. They are entertainment addicts who want their voices heard as collaborative partners. They are micro-information gatherers who expect bite-sized, manageable data for searching and learning. Since they are just becoming aware of the world around them, they are concerned about social issues like man's impact on the planet and world hunger, to name a few. Unfortunately, they have become acutely aware of and observed many incidents of peer bullying, whether online or face-to-face. And with the most recent shootings in schools, they are vocal about their demands on politicians and others to keep their schools and them safe. With technology devices for play and poor eating habits, childhood obesity remains an American epidemic. More than 12 million U.S. children are obese, 1 out of every 6 children. Obese children have an increased risk of developing a range of health problems, including high blood pressure and high cholesterol, both risk factors for heart disease. On a positive note, Generation Z could be the generation that ends smoking, since the ill effects of smoking are well known. Generation Z has a lot of great students in its ranks, although they can be difficult to manage and work with at times if teachers don't understand them. First and foremost, teachers must engage them via mobile devices using images like emojis, symbols, pictures, and video. In learning activities, teachers must recognize and depict children as diverse individuals, culturally and ethically. Teachers must give them a voice in their learning and allow them to create their own resources to demonstrate learning through video, picture galleries, and podcasts. Learning resources for them are best in short bursts of snackable content. And last but not least, they want to learn cooperatively and collectively with their peers using technology. As you teach Millennial and Generation Z students, truly connect with them and understand where they are coming from. Their life experiences are much different than yours. So it is critical that you tap into their world to prepare them for a lifetime with many unknowns. This concludes the presentation on generations and its impact